This time in Yerushalmi Eruvin, the article Ozma edition were on Daf Lamed Tes Rav, beginning of Lachas Zayin, about 5 lines at the top, and in the Vilna on Lamed Vav Rav, beginning of Lachas Zayin, which is about 3 lines at the bottom. So the Mishnah says, Ansh Ir Gedola, Machis Kol Ir Ktana. You have people of a large city, they can walk traverse an entire small city without an Erev Tchumen. Why don't they need an Erev Tchumen? Because the entire small city is within their tchum of 2,000 amos. And it only counts the small city as if it's 4 amos for them. So their meter of tchum, their measure of tchum is suspended. So again, assuming that the small city is itself 1,000 amos. So they got 1,000 amos till that city. They get that city as 4 amos. And then they get another 996 amos on the other side of the city. They can start counting again to the extent of the city, which is within their 2,000 amos. They're not measuring the 2,000 amos; it just counts as 4 amos. And they could this without any Erev Tchumen. But what about the other way around? In Ansh Ir Ktana, if you have a small city, and their tchum ends again without Erev Tchumen in the middle of a large city. Okay, so they're 2,000. It's not entire. Their large city is not entirely contained in their tchum. That's really why it's called large city relative to their city, and but they do get they can't go through the entire large city, meaning they still count their tchum clock never stopped ticking. And as far as they can go in the big city, that's as far as they can get. But when the 2,000 amos ends, the 2,000 amos ends, even in the middle of the city. Now, the Mishnah says, Ketzad. And the one is going to ask how this Ketzad follows how this explanation follows the beginning of the Mishnah. Ketzad, Mishahaya Be'ir G'dayla. It was in a large city, V'nasan es Eruva. Which the Rishon didn't talk about anything about Eruv. He put his Be'ir Ktana in a small city. Or Be'ir Ktana is a small city. V'nasan es Eruva Be'ir G'dayla put his in a large city. Ma'achas Kula V'chutz L'Alpai Mama. He goes through the entire city, and beyond that, he can go 2,000 amos. So the Eruv in the middle of the city encompasses the entire city as if it's one entity, and his count of 2,000 amos only starts beyond the walls of the city. Rabbi Yakim Omer, Ein L'Makom Eruva El Alpai Mama. It doesn't go it doesn't get the entire city as part of the tchum. It only gets from his Eruv 2,000 amos. In other words, the fact that it's in a city doesn't make a difference. Okay, so so it says Gemara, Kini Masti, is the way to understand the Mishnah. Anshe Ir Gedola Mahachis Koli Ir Ktana. The people of the large city go through the entire small city, which is included in their tchum, as if it's 4 amos. And this 4 amos is not mentioned explicitly here in the Gemara. It's from the Mefarshim here. The Pnei Moshe mentioned in the Mishnah. So again, Kini Masti, so Anshe Ir Gedola Mahachis Koli Ir Ktana. And they can go through the entire small city as if it's there. For Amos, Anshe Ir Ktana, Eina Mahachim Es Kol Ir Gedola. The people of the small city cannot walk through the entire large city, which is not encompassed in their 2,000 amos. Ketzad, but there's not anything about putting an eruv. How Ketzad leiskan Ketzad. What are you saying, Ketzad? It's not the middle. The case is not comparable to the ratio of the Mishnah. So Umar doesn't actually resolve that question. Umar says, okay, yeah, it's 2 separate cases. The case that is not explaining the ratio is describing, I guess we'd say, a phantom case in the Mishnah where the dude actually put down an eruv. The way the article learns it, Leiskan Ketzad. Remove the word Ketzad from the Mishnah, but he points out the footnote that the Yerushalmi, the Bavli doesn't take out the word Ketzad. It says there's a Chisurim Mechsur in the Mishnah. The Shittas Yerushalmi is not to do Chisurim Mechsur as in Mishnayos, but I'm not sure it's a matter of principle, just that a matter that doesn't go into what the Chisurim Mechsuras are. But you don't find Chisurim Mechsur in the Yerushalmi at all. So according to Korban Eda and according to Reb Chaim, also this is a question on our Mishnah. The question on Mishnah is whether we said the city is like 4 amos. Is in fact like 4 amos. The city, the smaller city within the compass of the 2,000 amos of the big city, is it just like four amos, and you continue whatever count you have beyond that city, or in fact does it you get just 2,000 amos beyond that city straight up? And that's one of his questions. Ir Mashta Midas Apaim on Rabbi Chizka B'Shem Rabbi Simon Shem Rabbi Yechon Ein Ir Ola Midas Apaim. That it doesn't count as part of the 2,000 amos. Therefore, you have an additional 2,000 amos beyond the city. According to Rabbi Lezer, Ir Ola Midas Apaim. No, it does count as 2,000. It counts as 4 amos. But and you get, besides the measure of the city, you get 1,996. But it does count as 4 amos. In any event, then clock doesn't start taking from scratch once you leave the city. But I think it's much easier like the Pnei Moshe. The Pnei Moshe learns going to the previous Mishnah. Moshe is going to say about saying puts an Erev. It puts its Erev outside the back that we use the word Tchum. We said meant outside the Ibor. So you put a Tchum, your Erev outside the city, one inside the city, and now you have 2,000 from your Erev outside the city. But what about the city you're leaving? Does that city count towards the 2,000 amos? Like Moshe says, it's going at that. Meaning, shemasi kol ir, you lose your entire city of origin. The pisha midas ir ola b'midas alpaim, because the 2,000. So now the city, the clock ticks throughout the entire city, and that you lose from your 2,000 amos. Or do we say, you measure 2,000 outside the city, on the other side from your Eruv, besides the city, and that's a machlikas. So, again, when you put an Eruv here, outside your city, which is over there, and you want to go in this direction, does the city count as part of the 2,000 amos and the clock ticks throughout the city, or does the city not count as 2,000 amos and you get 2,000 amos minus whatever you lost because you put Eruv on this side? You get the 2,000 amos beyond that minus that, you get the remainder 2,000 amos on the other side of the city, and that's the machlokas. Rabbi Yechon said, "Ein your limit said that mapayim," and Rabbi Lezer, "Ir olam midas apayim." They say in Yerushalmi that the principle that when the Amar precedes the name of the Baal Memra, it's a statement, whereas if it follows the name of the Baal Memra, it's a subject of a dispute. Is not it doesn't apply to Yerushalmi here, because here it says the Omar B'Chizka Omar B'Lezer, right? So the Omar preceding their statements, and nevertheless it's a machlokas here. The Bali would say Rabbi Chizkiah, Rabbi Simon Shem Rabbi Yechon Omar, and Rabbi Lezer Omar. Okay, next Barishayna Hibnei Tver Mahachin Kol Chamasa. The people from Tver go through the entire city of Chamasa. Ubnei Chamasa b'Chamasa Ein Magin El Ad HaKippa. You only get to the arch in Tveria. So the things developed over time, and the cities spread out. And now they are one city. We're seeing the Pnei Moshe here. Moshe says, Chamasa is Ir Ktana Smucha Tveria. Chamasa was a small city next to Tveria. Tveria Ir Gdola Tveria is a large city. V'mach is Kol Ir Chamasa. So they would go through the entire city of Chamasa. As is our Mishnah. Me Chamasa lo yimagin lev Chol Tveria. They couldn't go through all Tveria. El Arab Kippa. So it's a Sham b'makom shekol simidas where their measure ceased. But so because they were the Ir Ktana, vis-a-vis the Ir Gdola. V'achshav Siva B'Binyan. And now it's all one city, and they can both traverse the entirety of the other city because of the continuity. Rabbi said, the story transpired with a elderly shepherd. He came and sat in front of Rebbe. Only in the Chamsa. I remember that the people of Mido go up to Chamsa, Malchus Kol Chamasa, go through all of Chamasa. Umekin HaChachotzer Chitzaina HaSmuch LeGesher. And they will go the entire area of to the outer courtyard, which is next to the bridge. V'hite Rebbe, she will be named Migdal Oil Chamasa, Rebbe on the base of this testimony allowed that named Migdal Kol Chamasa, Malchus Kol Chamasa, and go up to Oil Chamasa, begin the Chotzer Chitzon and Gesher up to the outer courtyard next to the bridge. Now this is the other direction between not the direction it's fair where everything got built up. So okay, this was so far so good. He was matir. I guess he didn't require them to measure. He relied on this testimony that this has already been measured and determined. But now the Gemara says, "V'oite Rebbe," in this case also in Bavli, she'u b'nei Gader yardim l'chamosa, v'olu Gader, that the people of Gader can go down to Chamosa and go up back to Gader. B'nei Chamosa ain't olin l'Gader. The b'nei Chamosa could not go up to Gader. There's a picture here from the Perush Chai. People from Gader go down to Chamsa and not vice versa. Why not? It should be reciprocal. Okay, Moshe says, God, I said, Mount Bishipur Har, Chamsa Mata, Vitim Gader, La people Gader, she yardim l'Chamsa. Because of the pain, go back to their houses. The Chamsa loiter shul go there. Why not? So Raimona says, Raimona mivnei Rishuyos, because of the Rishuyos. What's the Rishuyos? So it says Moshe, show you elu tachos Rishus Surah Cheres mi elu. They were on the different rival jurisdictions. Ubnei Gader you makim b'chov b'nei Chamsa shebor b'Rishusan. And Bnei Gader would hit the people of Chamson who came into their area. So he did not allow the people of Chamson to go there, lest they get into fights. So the article points out that Bnei Moshe is like the Shita Rav Dimi and the Bavli, the Sam Machalef. The Korban is a different interpretation, which goes like Rav Safra and the Bavli. We're not going to, which has to do with the shape of the cities. I'm not going to. It's not clear how it fits precisely into the words, but to do with the shape of the cities like that. And one of them was made like an arch. The bottom of the Chamsa was like an arch, and therefore the 2,000 amos was measured differently because according to the bowstring. I'm not going to get into that because we're not interpreting the Gemara that way. But in any event, the article brings down from the Pnei Meir that they only had this problem on Shabbos, because on Shabbos people had downtime, and they would people would get drunk and much more likely to fight than a weekday when everybody was involved in their commercial activity or whatever they were whatever's preoccupying them, preventing them from fighting. Amar Rabbi Yosef Barbun, let me tell him that it wasn't an account of the violence issue. But it's rather because of our Mishnah. Anshe Ir Gedoyla, Machin is called Ir Ktana. The people of the large city, which in this case was Gader, would traverse the entire small city. And Ir Ktana, Machin called the small city, in this case Hamson, were not able to traverse the entire large city. The Korban explains this nicely. He says, "Beged Ir Gedoyla Hoisa, Ger Geder was a large city. Shulam Bnei Chamson LeGader, Bnei Chamson went up to Gader. Close to Midas of Chatzir, they were a small city, and their Midah measured ended in the middle of the city, as Chamson Ir Ktana. Ukshiordim, but since Chamson was a small city, showing up Bnei Gader, close to Midas of Mesofa here. Their Midah ended at the end. Their Tchum encompassed the entire city of Chamson. So like my Rebbe should be God that you already Chamson Liosla Kula that Amos. They go down to Chamson and it was the entirety of Chamson's 4 Amos for them. Mashlim Hemas Hashem, they can go beyond that whatever to complete their clock. I've got Chamson but God there was Sunei Chamsa part of the Tchum, and their Tchum stopped in the middle of the city. It could be Rabbi made a say they shouldn't go at all because he was afraid that once they got into the city, they would continue walking. And therefore say, you know what? You can't go there and shop at because nobody is going to pay attention and stop walking precisely in the city where their Tchum comes to an end. Okay, so coming to the next part of our Mishnah. So, where we had Machlokes in Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan about you put your Erev in the middle of the city. So, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Nachman B'Shem Rabbi Chaim said, "Mapiki b'Shnos Eruvin b'Platya." Tell you about when they put the Erev in the plaza, in the middle of the city. That they put the Erev inside one of the houses in the city. After even Rabbi Akiva concedes that you get the entire city as 4 amos. Then your Erev doesn't because then you become like a resident of the city. So the resident of the city, his tchum only starts beyond the city. So to now, this guy's tchum, who put his Erev tchum inside a house in the city, he became like a resident there, and his tchum only starts outside the city. Rabbi Puppy Boy, the brother son of Rabbi Puppy, asked, what about if the big city makes an Eruv? The city in which you put your Eruv Tchum, sorry, not big city. So which you put Eruv Tchum made an Eruv Chatzeros. Now the entire city is like one Chatzer, right? So Rabbi Boy, Hoysa Yerva. It was a city which made Eruv Chatzeros. And also Eruv Platya. Okay, they put the Eruv in the middle of the street. So what? Lo Commissioner Babatim is not as if you put in the house. So therefore, you should get 2,000 amas beyond the entire city if that city made Eruv Chatzeros. And it could be that this boy actually is a statement. The question is not, it's a challenge which is not the one that's respond to. Okay, now we asked on the sheet of Rabbanan. Yerushalmi, we have a city. The walls are there, but the city itself is inside has been ruined. So, what? And you put it in the middle of that city. So what's the story? According to Rabbanan in this case, Rabbi Elazar Mahal's Klub Chutzah Bay Mama. Still regarded as one unit, and you get 2,000 amas beyond that city. Shmuel since the city has become chorev, so therefore you only get 2,000 amas from the place where you put down your eruv, inside the desolate city. Rabbi Boa Bar Kana and Rav Chia Bar Rashi b'Shem Rav said, "No sevel b'dir or b'sar." What about it says that if you put your eruv in a animal pen, in a corral of some sort, where Mama says that you get the entirety of the pen or the corral. Well, so can we extrapolate from that? Is that a similar case? It's like a desolate city. So therefore, we resolve from that, like Rabbi Elazar. Okay, now I have an interesting statement. Ir Chadasha, a new city, Modei Minabatim, measured from the 2,000 amas from the houses, Minabatim. V'Yushan, an old city, Modei Minachema, you measure from the wall. Ezu Chadasha, Ezu Yushan, what's considered to be a new city, what's considered to be an old city? What are we talking about here? So Rabbi Zira, B'Shem Rabbi Chisa said, Banabatim, Banachema, if you built first the houses, and then afterwards you built the walls. So the Ada says, the wall, even though there's a gap, let's say, between the house and the wall would give you an additional amount of tchum. Doesn't matter. So it's tougher. The batim emodim elabina batim. You measure from the houses. But if you built the first the wall and then the houses. And so the Moshe Korana says Shabbatin feil b'choima. There the houses are subordinate to the wall, which came first. They measure from the wall, and says the Korana, which is key to understanding the terminology here. The old and new is going on the wall, where the wall is old or the wall is new. So again. Rabbi Zira said no, and we're going to go with the Girsa of Reb Chaim here. Before I do that, I should point out that the Bavli in Dav Chavav, the article is down in note 9, has Yishana Chadasha, the opposite. And according to the Bavli, the city where the houses were built after the wall is you measure from the houses, and where the wall was built later, you measure from the wall. So according to the question is whether the houses are new or old. Okay, but that's not the Yerushalmi. So if you want to see the Bavli, Tav Chavav, he argues on the Yerushalmi. So here, again, going back to the Girsa of Reb Chaim, Reb Zirma Benzu Yeshana. Those are both considered to be Yeshana. You measure from the wall. Ezi Chadasha. See, we can switch to Chadasha and Yeshana. So Ezi Chadasha. Kosher Yuba Dorei Diur Charbu. It had Durin. People lived there, and then it got desolate. And then a few people came back. So there's a new settlement. But the old city was basically, all the habitations were gone. A few people came back. And now, the new habitations, you measure from the houses. Okay, so could be that even this continuous, I think I might say, even this continuous settlement, since most of the city was destroyed, so whatever settlement is there, even if it's continuous from before, it's considered to be like Chadasha, and so you measure from the houses. So the fact that the original city was primarily destroyed means that its relationship to the walls was nullified, and maybe because the walls didn't protect them, the walls are nullified, and therefore you measure from whatever the houses are where people are dwelling within the larger area of that desolate city. Rebizir Kedaite. Now the Gemara is choppy no matter which way you learn it, and so just going to Reb Chaim because it's as on the side of the Gemara, it's the easiest way to go. So Rebizir Kedaite Spagam Bona Tisha Shem Karpav. You built 9 houses for the purpose of the Karpav. In other words, not for the purpose of the wall. Because the houses came before the wall, or they were non-proximity to the wall or something. V'echel l'shem dire, and then you built one additional house, which had some affinity to the wall. So then, according to whoever the first Amora here is, it seems that he holds that you go after the houses. The wall is not considered to be significant because most of the city was built without reference to wall, and therefore the wall is butted to the house, like we said before. Amar Rabbi, and here's where the B'chaim changed the gear. So Amar Rabbi Zihira, is shame dire, even but one of the houses, with the intent of it having connection to the wall. The wall now becomes the perimeter of the community. And therefore, you measure Hareu Kedair. It's like it's entirely settled as a walled city, and therefore you measure from the tchum from the wall, not from the houses. Okay, Halacha Ches. Amar Meir Akiva said, "Don't you concede to me when he puts his erev on the opening of a cave? The fact that it's in a cave doesn't extend to the erev; it only gets 2,000 amos. So therefore." Also, you put him in the middle of the city. You should only get 2,000 amos from the place where the Erev is, not from the perimeter of the city. So you don't get from the outside of the cave. Amalei said, no, Amos type is much aim but urine. That's if the cave has no place to live inside it. Avol, it was much yesh but urine. If it does have a place to live inside, it's a, so to speak, settled cave. This fair schreiber example. A domesticated cave. So the you go its entirety, the cave, and beyond the cave, 2,000 amos. Nimtza kal, so you have a leniency. Betocha, putting the Erev inside the cave. Now God was putting the Eruv on top of the cave, in which case it would not be extended that direction just because it's in the cave, over a cave. Over a cave does nothing. But that's only where you have you put an Eruv Tchumen inside there. But if you just count the 2,000 amas from the city and ends in the middle of the cave, Shafiu somebody does a call Mamara, even if it ends in measure the middle of the cave, that's all you get. That's this picture over here. 2,000 amas ends. Where's the picture? One page. 2,000 amas ends in the middle of a cave. Then you get the 2,000, where the 2,000 amas ends, and you don't get to go any further than that. Okay, so speaking of the topic of the urine, somebody who acquires shvisa by actually being a karpov over Shabbos is more lenient Eruv karpov than somebody puts in the Aaron's karpov, because karpov is an area which doesn't have the urine. It's not made to be settled. How can a shvisa karpov, if you acquire a shvisa karpov, which is surrounded by some sort of structure, even though it's not settled, machas kuligo, the entirety of the karpov, the enveloped structure, go 2 hours beyond it. No Eruv karpov, put your Aaron karpov, since it's not a settled area. Ain't no urine. Only gets 2,000 amas in from the place wherever his Eruv is in the karpov. The walls of the karpov don't extend his Eruv, so we don't follow that perimeter. So Rabbi Zir asked, "Amar tikna li shvisa b'karpov." It's not actually fit in the karpov. The Pnei Moshe means it says it's standing at a different distance, and he's saying, "Oh, I want my shvisa to be in the karpov," which you can do since you see it at the end of a karpov. So he's get 2,000 amas only from wherever the place in the karpov he identified. So that should be my shvisa. Or does it get 2,000 amas in the entire perimeter as if he was shoves in the karpov itself? Reb Chaim says it's talking about even in Ma'ariv Baraglov. He actually went there, but he didn't put down an Eruv Tchumen there. He went and stood there, and he acquired shvisa there. But then he went back home. Does he have the next day 2,000 hours from this place, just the place where he stood? Besides 2,000 hours from the perimeter of that karpov. So Gemara says it seems to be a machlekes. Rabbi China braid Rabbi Hila said machlekes and made Rabbi Hila. So Rabbi Hila. You can learn this, apply this whether you're learning like Pnei Moshe that he identified as shvisa or he actually went there and stood there. The primary Eruv is by using a kikar. Benosin eruvo bekarpaf elomakom eruvo elapai mama. But if you put an in a karpaf, you only get 2,000 amos. And from the kikar, you don't consider the there wasn't his makom shvisa. You just put a kikar there, so you get 2,000 amos from the kikar, not from the perimeter karpaf, and it's a kavachomer. It's certainly therefore if it's malach baraglov or identified that place from a distance, that he's not going to get 2,000 amas to the perimeter. He's only going to get 2,000 amas from the from the place he identified or the place he was standing. So the primary error is by when he goes there. He says when he says therefore according to Chaim, he actually stood there and said according to Moshe, even just identify for distance, since that's the Iker Erev, Malchus Kula v'chutzla pa'imama, so then he can go and that entire perimeter and beyond that 2,000 amos. Okay, that's it for today.